The stone walls remembered everything. 2,200 scratches carved into ancient rock, each one a day that refused to end. Elena Ravenshadow's fingers traced the final mark and felt the tremor in her hand that had nothing to do with fear. Wolfsbane poisoning didn't kill quickly. It ate slowly, methodically, turning nerve endings into rivers of liquid fire. 6 years in absolute darkness teaches things medical texts never could. How to count heartbeats when clocks don't exist. How to map a castle's layout through vibrations in stone. How to suppress light that wants desperately to heal you because every time it flared, they came with their silver vials and harvesting needles. The cell measured 12 feet by 8. Lena knew because she'd crawled every inch during year 3 when despair had briefly convinced her that maybe, just maybe, they'd missed a crack, a seam, some microscopic flaw in her prison. They hadn't. Whoever built this place understood lightcasters the way a butcher understands cattle. Her heartbeat counted 18 per minute now. Used to be 65. The human body, when systematically drained of blood and starved of light, becomes remarkably efficient. Every breath calculated, every movement rationed. She'd weighed 128 pounds the day they dragged her down here. Now maybe 80. Hard to tell when you couldn't see your own hands in the dark. But something had changed in the last hour. A vibration deep and rhythmic pulsing through the foundation stones. Not the usual guard rotations, not the weekly harvest visits. This felt different, primal, like the mountain itself had developed a heartbeat. Elena pressed her palm flat against the floor and felt it again. Ceremony Hall. She was directly beneath Ceremony Hall, where they crowned kings and swore sacred oaths on that massive hunk of obsidian they called the Oath Stone. She'd figured out the geography in year 4 after enough eavesdropping revealed locations, distances, architectural references. The irony wasn't lost on her. Every king for 6 years had placed his hand on stone that sat directly above her cell, swearing truth and justice, while she rotted in chains beneath their feet. The vibration grew stronger. Footsteps now, definitely footsteps, but wrong, too heavy, too fast, running, not walking. And that smell filtering down through ventilation gaps they'd never quite managed to seal completely. Pine and mountain snow and something wild that made her suppressed light flicker involuntarily behind her sternum. Wolf. Pure alpha wolf, close and getting closer. Elena pushed herself upright, chains rattling. The wolfsbane lace shackles had worn grooves into her wrists deep enough to expose bone in places. Didn't matter. If someone was coming, she'd meet them on her feet. She'd survived all these days by being stubborn. Why stop now? The darkness above her exploded, not figuratively, literally exploded. The iron door that had sealed her tomb for 6 years shrieked as something tore it completely off its hinges. Metal screamed, stone cracked, and then light blessed and terrible flooded in like a physical blow. Elena's eyes adapted to years of absolute blackness. White-hot agony lanced through her skull. She threw up an arm instinctively, but couldn't stop the tears streaming down her face. Or the way her body's first instinct was to flood her system with healing light, the thing she'd suppressed for so long, it felt like vomiting stars. Silver luminescence erupted from her skin, not gentle, not controlled, pure survival reflex from a body that had forgotten it could fight back. "Don't hurt me." The words came out before she could stop them. Hated herself for it. Years of torture, and her first response to potential freedom was, "Please don't hurt me. I've been good. I didn't use it. Not once, do you?" I kept it buried. A shadow filled the doorway, massive, male, radiating enough alpha energy to make her wolf-adjacent senses scream warnings. For one horrible second, Elena thought they'd sent someone to finish what starvation couldn't. Then he spoke. "I'm not here to hurt you." The voice hit like warm whiskey in winter storms, deep enough to feel in her chest cavity, and that smell, pine and snow, and something underneath that made every cell in her body snap to attention despite the whole dying thing. Elena forced her eyes open against the light, squinting through tears and years of atrophied vision. The man in her doorway didn't look like a guard. Too clean, too regal, wearing ceremonial armor that probably cost more than entire villages, though it was torn now, scorched in places. His hands bore fresh burns, skin blistered and raw. From the door, he'd torn through wolfsbane-laced iron with his bare hands. "Who are you?" Her voice cracked halfway through. Hadn't used it in 3 months. No point talking when no one answered. Cormac Ironwood. He took a step closer, moving slow like she was a wild animal. I'm King, Elena finished. You're the new king. I felt the old one die. The stones mourned him. She watched his face process that, watched confusion, then something harder, understanding maybe, or horror. How long have you been down here? Elena laughed, sounded like broken glass. What day is it? June 19th, 2024. Then 6 years, give or take. She gestured at the wall behind her, where tally marks covered stone in obsessive rows. I kept count for a while. Then it seemed less important than conserving energy. Cormac stared at the marks. His jaw worked like he was chewing words too terrible to speak. When he looked back at her, his eyes had changed color, shifted from dark brown to molten gold. Wolf eyes, his beast pushing forward. You're Lightcaster. Statement, not question. Elena nodded. No point denying the obvious, not when she was literally glowing like a dying star. Your father told everyone he'd eliminated the Lightcasters. 24 years ago, said it was necessary for kingdom security. Eliminated most of us. Elena's light flickered, pulling back into her core where she'd taught it to hide. But Lightcaster blood is valuable. Alive anyway. Dead, we're just corpses. Alive and suffering, we're a renewable resource. She watched him flinch. Good. Let him flinch. Let him understand exactly what his father's kingdom was built on. I'm getting you out of here. Cormac moved forward, reaching for her chains. Wait. Elena pulled back. 2 conditions first. He froze. You're negotiating. I'm dying. Got maybe 4 hours left according to my count. So yes, I'm negotiating. Because if I'm spending my last few hours doing something, it better matter. Cormac stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Fair enough. Most people on death's door didn't haggle. What conditions? 1, you investigate who put me here. Not just your father. Everyone who knew, everyone who participated, everyone who took money for my blood. Elena met his eyes, held them. I want names. Done. And 2, check levels 6 and 7. Below this cell, there are 7 others down there. 7 heartbeats I've been listening to for 3 years. They're dying faster than I did. Children, most of them. Get them out. Something in Cormac's expression shattered. He closed his eyes, took a breath that sounded painful. When he opened them again, the gold was brighter. I swear it. On my life. On my crown. On everything I am. Elena studied him. 6 years of reading voices in darkness had taught her to hear lies. This wasn't a lie. This was an oath carved in bone. Then get these chains off me. And if you have to carry me out, try not to drop me. I'm fragile. The chains dissolved under his claws, not cut, dissolved. Like the wolfsbane that had poisoned her for 6 years, simply unmade itself in the presence of whatever he was. Elena watched her wrists, watched the deep grooves where metal had eaten flesh, and felt her light surge automatically toward the wounds. They healed. Not completely, but enough to stop bleeding. Enough to function. You're light. Cormac's voice held wonder. It's not burning me. Elena looked at his hands. The blisters from tearing through the door were gone. Kin smooth and unmarked where her light had touched him while healing herself. That's not possible, she breathed. Lightcaster energy burns wolf blood on contact. It's biology. We're natural enemies. Apparently not. And then it hit. Not gentle. Not a slow realization. A lightning strike that drove both of them to their knees simultaneously. Mate bond. Elena felt it lock into place like a key in a lock she didn't know existed. Every cell in her body screaming recognition. Every instinct she had, wolf adjacent, as they were howling, mine, mine, mine. No, she gasped. No, 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 this isn't possible. I don't have a wolf. I can't be anyone's mate. I felt you dying. Cormac's voice was ragged. In the middle of my coronation. Felt your heartbeat failing through stone and steel. My wolf took control, dragged me down here. I couldn't breathe until I found you. Elena looked at him, really looked. At the desperation in his eyes, the way his hands shook, the way his entire body oriented toward her like she was magnetic north. Mate Bond didn't lie, didn't make mistakes. She was his. He was hers. And she had maybe 4 hours to live. Well, Elena's laugh came out slightly hysterical. Isn't that just perfect timing? Footsteps thundered on the stairs above. Multiple guards by the sound of it. Someone shouted orders. The whole castle was probably in chaos with their new king vanishing mid-ceremony. Can you walk? Cormac asked. Probably not. Elena tried anyway. Got one step before her legs folded. 6 years of near starvation and muscle atrophy didn't recover in minutes, Mate Bond, or not. Cormac caught her before she hit stone. And the moment his arms closed around her, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in 6 years. Safe. Which was ridiculous. She was dying. He was a king who just discovered his mate was the thing his father had spent decades trying to eradicate. Nothing about this was safe. But his heartbeat under her ear, steady and strong, said otherwise. Hold on, he murmured. I've got you. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to say she'd held on for 6 years alone. She didn't need help now. But her body betrayed her, going limp in his arms, and for the first time since she was 16, she let someone else carry the weight. Ceremony Hall had never looked so bright, or so hostile. Cormac burst through the doorway carrying Elena like she weighed nothing, which fair she basically didn't. 800 guests still filled the space nobility from every wolf territory in North America. They'd been waiting for their new king to finish whatever dramatic exit he'd staged. Now they got to see him return covered in blood and burns holding what looked like a corpse. Except the corpse was glowing. Silver light pulsed from Elena's skin in waves, involuntary and impossible to hide now. Her body was doing triage, trying to heal 6 years of damage in 6 minutes and failing spectacularly. She could feel her light guttering like a candle in wind. Healer Lysander, Cormac's voice carried. Now. An elderly man pushed through the crowd, 70 at least, with more scars than a battlefield surgeon and eyes that had seen 4 generations of kings. He took one look at Elena and went pale. Your Majesty. Lysander's hands were already glowing with diagnostic magic. This woman's been exposed to wolfsbane poisoning for years. Her organs are failing, multiple systems in collapse. His eyes widened. Mother of wolves, she should be dead already. How long does she have? 6 hours, maybe less. Lysander met Cormac's eyes. I can slow it, can't stop it. This much poisoning, there's no cure. I'm sorry. The crowd exploded into whispers. Elena heard fragments through the ringing in her ears. Lightcaster, abomination, the old king exterminated them. Security threat, corruption of bloodlines. Then another voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Your Majesty, step away from that creature immediately. High Counselor Thaddeus Coldwell. Elena had never seen him, but she'd heard his voice plenty. Every monthly council meeting held in chambers directly above level 7, his voice filtered down through stone. Cultured, educated, and absolutely certain of his own righteousness. Cormac turned slowly. When he spoke, his voice could have frozen fire. Counselor, choose your next words carefully. Thaddeus didn't flinch. Mid-60s, silver-haired, wearing authority-like armor. That is a lightcaster. Your father, King Aldrich, eliminated that bloodline 24 years ago for excellent reasons. If one survived, it's a security threat to the kingdom. Security threat? Elena's voice surprised her. Didn't realize she still had volume. Is that what you call it? Every eye in the room swiveled to her. Good. Let them look. Let them see what their prosperity cost. You want to talk security, Counselor? Elena gripped Cormac's shoulder, pulling herself more upright despite the pain. Let's talk about the 7 light casters on levels 6 and 7. Let's talk about harvest schedules and blood quotas. Let's talk about how much you sold my suffering for. Thaddeus's face went carefully blank. That was answer enough. She's delirious, he said smoothly. Wolfsbane poisoning causes hallucinations. Your Majesty, for the safety of everyone here, I'm not delirious. Elena locked eyes with him. I'm the product. You're the merchant. And we both know exactly what you've been selling. The crowd's whispers turned uncertain. Elena watched nobles exchange glances, saw confusion replacing hostility. They didn't know. Most of them genuinely didn't know. But Thaddeus knew. And the 3 counselors behind him, the ones whose faces had gone gray, they knew too. A new voice, female and ancient. The girl has the right to trial. Elder Cassia Thornwell pushed through the crowd, 80 if she was a day bent with age but sharp as broken glass. She'd survived the Great Severance, the event that split lightcasters and wolves into warring factions, which meant she was one of maybe 5 people alive who remembered what came before. Trial, Thaddeus spluttered. She's already been judged. By whom, King Aldrich? Cassia's laugh was dry as autumn leaves. Dead men can't judge. And I see no formal verdict, no legal documentation, just a girl in chains. Cormac's arms tightened around Elena. She felt his heartbeat accelerating through the mate bond, felt his wolf rising. What kind of trial, he asked. Moon trial, the old way. Cassia's eyes gleamed. If she's truly your mate, as I suspect, the Oathstone will recognize her. If not, it will reject her. Violently. Elena laughed. Couldn't help it. So my choices are death by wolfsbane poisoning in 6 hours, or death by magic rock in 6 minutes. Yes. At least the rock in faster. Elena looked up at Cormac. Put me down. Let's get this over with. Elena, if I'm dying anyway, let it prove I'm not poison. She met his eyes. Besides, wouldn't you rather know? Before you waste what's left of my time mourning someone who might just be biology playing tricks. Something in his face cracked. It's not biology. It's not a trick. Then the stone will prove it. He set her down carefully. Elena's legs held for exactly 3 seconds before they started trembling. Didn't matter. The Oathstone sat maybe 20 feet away. She'd crawl if she had to. The crowd parted. Some moved willingly. Others were pushed by Breslin Hargrave, Cormac's captain of the guard, who'd followed his king down into hell and come back looking like he'd seen the end of days. Good man, Elena decided. Loyal. She appreciated loyalty. The Oathstone dominated the chamber's center. Obsidian carved with runes old as the kingdom itself, big as a dining table. Black as void, smooth as glass. Every king for 200 years had placed their hand on this stone and sworn their coronation oath, and she'd been buried directly beneath it. Elena approached. Each step felt like walking on broken glass, but she kept moving. Behind her, Cormac's shadow close enough to catch if she fell. Didn't touch, though. This had to be her choice. Place your hand on the stone, Cassia instructed. The rest is automatic. Elena looked at the obsidian surface. Saw her reflection in it, ghostly and skeletal. Saw 6 years of darkness living in her eyes. Saw something else 2 deeper down. Light that refused to die, even when dying would have been easier. For the record, she said to no one in particular, this is a terrible idea. Then she placed her palm flat on the Oathstone. Pain detonated. Not physical, deeper, like the stone reached inside her chest and grabbed her soul with teeth. Elena's back arched. Her light exploded outward in pure reflex silver radiance, flooding the chamber, so bright, people cried out and shielded their eyes. But she didn't scream. 6 years of torture had taught her screaming only made them happier. So she locked her jaw and endured as the stone peeled her open layer by layer, examining everything she was. And showed it to everyone watching. Images erupted from the obsidian surface, projected like holograms in the air above. Not just images, memories. The stone's memories recorded in crystal structure over decades. First memory, King Aldrich Cormac's father 6 years ago, standing in this very hall, speaking to someone off frame. Seal the raven shadow girl below. Let darkness do what wolfsbane can't. We need her alive, but we need her broken. Second memory. Thaddeus, younger but recognizable, presenting documents. The blood trade brings 200,000 annually, Your Majesty. More if we expand to the northern territories. The girl's regeneration makes her ideal for long-term harvest. Third memory. Guards dragging a 16-year-old Elena screaming toward the stairs that led down. Down into darkness, her mother's voice already fading, crying her name. Her father Marcus standing stone-faced in shadows, watching, doing nothing. Fourth, fifth, sixth memories. Years compressed into seconds. Harvest logs, blood quotas, financial ledgers floating in crystalline air, showing dates, amounts, clients. 8 lightcasters total. Revenue over 6 years, $4.7 million. The crowd's whispers died completely. Silence fell like a funeral shroud. Elena felt the stone digging deeper. felt it reaching the core of what she was, and she let it. Let it see every moment of suffering. Let it see the darkness, the pain, the time she'd nearly let go. Let it see the moment she decided living was revenge. The oath stone began to crack. Not small cracks, massive fissures splitting obsidian that had stood unbreached for 2 centuries. Light poured from the fractures, silver and bright, and absolutely not supposed to happen. Impossible, Lysander breathed. The cracks spread. Elena felt energy building like a dam about to break. Too much. The stone couldn't handle what she was because what she was shouldn't exist. Lightcaster and something else. Something her father had given her, hidden deep in genetics. Shadow inheritance dormant all these years. The stone was trying to categorize her failing, and failing was making it fracture. Elena. Cormac's hand closed over hers on the stone. The moment they touched, everything changed. His energy flooded into the connection. Wolf essence pure and primal, meeting her light and her shadow. 3 forces that should have annihilated each other. 3 natural enemies sharing space. They merged instead. The oath stone exploded, not violently, not destructively. It simply dissolved into light, every particle unmaking itself, then remaking into something new. Something that had never existed before. When the radiance faded, a new stone sat where the oath stone had been. Not black, not silver, not gold. All 3 colors swirled together in patterns that hurt to look at, directly pulsing with a heartbeat rhythm that matched Elena's pulse exactly. The Genesis stone. Cassia dropped to her knees. Then half the nobles followed. Then more. Until most of the chamber knelt before something they didn't understand but recognized on instinct. The bridge, Cassia whispered. After 200 years, the bridge returns. Elena swayed. The energy release had taken everything left in her reserves. Her vision grayed at the edges, consciousness slipping like water through fingers. But this time she caught herself on the stone surface, holding herself upright through sheer will. What does that mean? Cormac moved to support her, but she waved him off gently. The bridge. It means, Cassia said slowly, she's not just your mate, she's the reunification. Light and wolf and shadow merged in one bloodline. The great severance undone. She needs healing. Cormac's voice held barely controlled panic. No, she needs transformation. Cassia approached Elena carefully. Child, what you just did requires payment. Your body must evolve to hold what you've become. It will take days, it will hurt, but it won't kill you. How do you know? Elena's voice came out barely audible. Because the Genesis stone recognizes you. It wouldn't have formed if you couldn't survive the becoming. Elena wanted to argue, but her body chose that moment to give in completely. Not death, something else. The moon trial had stabilized her core systems long enough for transformation to take over, turning death countdown into evolution clock. Still painful, still dangerous, but no longer inevitable. Her legs folded, but she gripped the Genesis stone's surface, keeping herself from falling completely. Kale's lesson about standing on your own feet, learned before she'd even met him, carried her through. I can walk, she whispered. Someone just point me toward a bed. The last thing she heard before darkness took her was Cormac's voice, rough with something that might have been tears and pride mixed. Stubborn, you're impossibly stubborn. And the last thing she thought was, survive this long being stubborn. Why stop now? Then the transformation swallowed her whole. But this time the darkness was warm. Darkness wasn't always cold. Elena learned that in the space between ending and evolving. This darkness held warmth, pulsed with rhythms she'd never felt before, wrapped around her like a cocoon made of starlight and shadow. Conscious but not awake. Aware but not present. Floating in a space where her body unmade itself cell by cell, then rebuilt according to blueprints written in genetics she'd inherited from 2 impossible sources. Time stopped meaning anything. But pain still had vocabulary. Hour 1 felt like her skeleton was melting. Bones that had held her upright for 22 years decided they were inadequate, dissolved into something between liquid and light, then reformed denser, stronger. She experienced it from the inside, watching with senses that shouldn't exist as her frame restructured itself. Femurs lengthened slightly. Ribs expanded to accommodate something her chest cavity was building. Spine articulated with new precision, each vertebra locking into place with small clicks. She felt rather than heard. Like being built from a blueprint I didn't know I had, she thought distantly. Hour 24 brought the muscles. Tissue that had atrophied over years of starvation didn't gradually heal. It tore itself apart, completely burned away to nothing, then wove back together with threads of light and shadow braided through every fiber. Her body was learning to move in ways human musculature couldn't support. Wings, she realized. Her back was preparing to grow wings. That should have terrified her. Didn't. Fear required energy she didn't have. Hour 48 was the heart. Her original heart, the one that had beaten steadily if weakly for 22 years, stopped. Just stopped. Flatlined. And in that moment of absolute stillness, Elena saw memories tied to each arrested beat. First death mother. Liana Morningstar falling in front of a blade meant for Elena. Blood on pale carpet. Her last words not a plea, but a curse binding her life force to her daughters, so Marcus couldn't kill what he feared. Elena watched that moment again, felt her 16-year-old self screaming, and knew now what she hadn't then. Her mother had doomed Marcus to 6 years of vicarious torture, had made him feel every moment of Elena's suffering through blood curse, revenge and protection in one breath. Second death father, Marcus Nightvale, turning his back as guards dragged Elena toward the stairs, his face stone, his eyes void black and empty, walking away while she screamed his name. The last image she'd had of him before darkness swallowed everything. Third death, first day in the cell. The moment she realized no one was coming, that this wasn't temporary imprisonment, but a tomb she'd occupy until her body finally gave up. The sound of her own sobbing echoing off stone unanswered. Her heart died holding those memories. Then a new heart formed beside the old one, not replacing it, partnering with it. The original started beating again, slow and steady, pumping blood. The new one pulsed in counterpoint, circulating something else. Energy. Light and shadow mixed, flowing through new pathways. Her cardiovascular system was building in real time. Dual hearts. One human, one something else entirely. Elena felt them synchronize, finding rhythm together, and understood. She wasn't transforming into wolf or lightcaster or shadow king. She was becoming all three. Genesis. Hour 72 brought integration. Light from her mother's bloodline, shadow from her father's, and something new from the mate bond with Cormac. Wolf touched without being wolf. The three forces that should have destroyed each other found equilibrium, instead mixing in patterns that wrote themselves into her DNA. This was what they'd feared. What the great severance had been designed to prevent. Not because it was destructive, but because it was evolution. And evolution threatened everyone who'd built power on the old divisions. Somewhere outside her cocoon, she heard voices. Cormac's mainly rough with exhaustion. He hadn't left. 72 hours of vigil, his hand holding hers, his presence an anchor, while she drowned and resurfaced in transformation. She felt him through the mate bond, felt his terror every time her breathing stuttered, his relief every time her hearts found rhythm again. And she felt something else, his guilt, heavy as mountains, old as stone. He'd been reading something. His father's journal, she realized, accessing his thoughts through their connection. Private writings from King Aldrich, documenting decisions, justifications, the slow corruption of a man who'd convinced himself that some suffering was necessary for the greater good. One entry burned in Cormac's mind, seared there. Year 2018, the Raven Shadow Girl proves remarkably resilient. 6 months of imprisonment, and her light still regenerates. Thaddeus suggests we've only begun to tap the resource. For the kingdom's future, for the prosperity of our people, some must bear darkness so others can walk in light. It's the burden of kingship to make these choices. Cormac had vomited after reading that. Elena felt his shame like acid. His horror at discovering the father he'd admired had been a monster in expensive armor. His certainty that he'd failed everyone by not knowing, not questioning, not looking beneath the castle he'd grown up in. She wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault. Wanted to say that children shouldn't have to investigate their parents' dungeons. But she was trapped in transformation, voiceless, and could only broadcast comfort through the bond. Small mercies, but she sent them anyway. Hour 73. Something shifted. Her consciousness started pulling back toward her body, drawn by voices outside the cocoon. 6 levels down, northwest corner, iron door with triple locks. 7 heartbeats. Kyle's is weakest. Maybe 12 hours left. Her own voice, but she hadn't spoken. Her body had reflexively in the brief window of semi-consciousness, giving Cormac coordinates, completing the promise she'd made in the cell. Get them out, the seven below. She felt Cormac move, felt him stand and issue orders. Breslin's voice responding. Footsteps heading toward the dungeons, going deeper than they'd gone before down where the real horrors lived. Elena tried to follow, but transformation dragged her back under. Not done yet, still building, still becoming. But she sent a thread of consciousness with them anyway, riding the mate bond, experiencing what Cormac found through his senses. Level 6 was worse than her cell. Smaller spaces, more wolfsbane in the walls, and the smell. Death and despair and human waste, years of it baked into stone. 7 cells, 7 bodies, 7 heartbeats, some stronger than others. Breslin broke the first lock. Inside a boy. 13 at most skeletal, chained the same way Elena had been. But his eyes, when they opened, burned violet bright, even in darkness. Are you death? The boy whispered. No. Cormac's voice was gentle. I'm help. Help came before, they lied. I'm not lying. The boy Cale studied him, then looked past him at something Cormac couldn't see, at the thread of Elena's consciousness she'd sent along. Sister, Cale breathed. You're like the sister upstairs, the one who glows. Her name is Elena, Cormac said. She's the one who told me you were here. Cale's face crumpled. Tears tracked down his skeletal cheeks, cutting paths through grime. I thought I dreamed her. I hear her heartbeat sometimes. 2 hearts beating different. She's real, and she's coming for you as soon as she can. They opened the other cells. 6 more light sasters, various ages, all near death. Iris, 16, blind from having her tears harvested. So many times her tear ducts had scarred shut. She flinched from touch, whispering about vials and pain, and men who said crying made the poison stronger. Owen, 19 legs crippled from wolfsbane poisoning, concentrated in his lower body. He couldn't stand anymore. Hadn't stood in years. Mira, 25, oldest of them all. 10 years in darkness. She'd stopped speaking in year 7, Cale whispered. Just breathed and existed and waited for death that never came. 3 others children between 9 and 14 who'd been down here so long they didn't remember their names, just numbers. Specimen designations written on their cell doors. Cormac carried them out one by one. Breslin helped. They made 7 trips, bringing broken bodies up to light, to Lysander's infirmary, to safety that felt too late and not enough. Through the bond, Elena felt Cormac's rage building, felt his wolf howling for blood, for justice, for the chance to tear apart everyone who'd known and done nothing. She sent calming energy, but it was like trying to soothe a wildfire with raindrops. Then something changed. Transformation reached critical point. Her body decided it was done building time to wake up. Lena's eyes opened. The world flooded in with crystalline clarity. Not just sight, but layers of sight. Physical reality, yes, but also energy flows threading through everything like rivers of light. She saw Cormac as a blazing golden sun wolf essence so bright it should have hurt to perceive. Saw Lysander as steady silver-green healer magic wrapping around him like armor. Saw 7 new lights in the infirmary below, violet flames guttering, but fighting to stay lit. And she saw herself. Saw how her light and shadow had merged into something that pulsed with triple rhythm. Light, shadow, wolf touched, Genesis. She sat up. Movement felt different, easier, like her body weighed nothing because it was half energy now. Her skin glowed faintly silver white with black undertones that shifted when she moved. Her hair, she realized, had changed from dirty blonde to white gold. And her hearts, God. She felt them both distinctly. The human heart pumping blood, the Genesis heart circulating power. Hello, she whispered. Voice different too. Richer, layered with harmonics that shouldn't exist in human vocal cords. Cormac spun from where he'd been standing by the window. His face exhausted and grief-worn transformed when he saw her. Relief so profound it nearly broke the mate bond. Elena. How long? 3 days, 72 hours. He crossed to her in 3 strides, stopped just short of touching, like he wasn't sure he was allowed. How do you feel? Different. Complete. She looked at her hands, watched light and shadow chase each other under her skin. Like I spent 22 years being half of something, and now I'm whole. The 7 are here, in the infirmary. Lysander is working on them. I know, I felt you find them. Lena met his eyes. Thank you. You don't thank me for basic decency. You'd be surprised how rare basic decency is. She stood, legs held perfectly. Her body had rebuilt itself, efficient and strong, compensating for years of atrophy with supernatural enhancement. She took a step, then another. Movement felt like breathing. Natural. Right. I need to see them, she said. You just woke up. They've been alone in darkness for years. They need to see another light caster free, not just hear about it. Elena looked at him steadily. I know what it means when hope is only a story. I need to make it real for them. Cormac studied her. Whatever he saw in her face made him nod. Then I'm coming with you. They walked through castle corridors together. Elena noticed everything. Stone passages she'd only experienced as vibrations through her cell floor. Windows showing mountain ranges she'd dreamed about for years. Guards who stepped back when they saw her, fear and awe mixing in their expressions. She ignored them, focused on the 7 heartbeats below growing stronger now that Lysander was working, but still fragile. The infirmary sprawled across the castle's east wing. Large room windows facing sunrise beds separated by curtains. Lysander had placed the 7 light casters together in one section, away from regular patients who might panic. Elena stepped through the curtain. 7 pairs of eyes locked on her. 7 gazes, some bright, some dim, all desperate. Kael sat up first. Sister, you're real. I'm real. Elena crossed to him, moving slow, non-threatening. She'd been the frightened one enough times to know how to approach carefully. My name is Elena. What's yours? Kael Emberlight. He stared at her skin, at the way it glowed steady and bright. You're not dying anymore. No, I transformed, Genesis form. She held out her hand. May I? Kel placed his skeletal hand in hers. The moment they touched, Elena had to let her power flow. Not healing exactly. She wasn't strong enough for that yet, but stabilizing, sharing strength. Her light touched his light, showed it how to burn brighter. Kale gasped. Color returned to his face, just a hint. His heartbeat strengthened. How, he breathed, we're light casters. We were never meant to be alone. Light grows stronger when it's shared. She moved to each of them in turn. Iris, who flinched at first, but relaxed when Elena's energy touched hers gently, respectfully, healing nothing but offering support. Owen, whose legs she couldn't repair, but whose pain she could ease. Mira, who still didn't speak, but whose eyes filled with tears when Elena's light wrapped around her like a blanket. The 3 youngest children, nameless, who clung to her like she was salvation itself. I can't heal everything, Elena said softly. Not yet. I'm still learning what I am. But I can promise you this. No one will touch you again. No one will harvest you. No one will hurt you. And if they try, they'll go through me first. You're one person, Iris whispered. The council will answer for what they've done. Cormac's voice cut in. He'd been standing at the room's edge watching. Now he stepped forward. Emergency session is called for 2 hours from now. They want to vote on whether to execute the all-light casters. Silence. Then Kael laughed. Bitter, old. Of course they do. Can't let the product escape. They won't vote the way they expect. Elena stood. Because before they vote, we're going to show them exactly what they've been funding. 2 hours later, ceremony hall was packed. Again. Council members in their formal robes, nobility, from every territory, guards lining the walls. The Genesis stone pulsed in the center of the room, triple-colored light casting strange shadows. Thaddeus Coldwell stood at the council's head, composed, confident, like a man who knew the vote would go his way. Elena walked in through the main doors, not carried this time. Walking on her own feet, dressed in simple clothes, Lysander had provided, glowing faintly with power she no longer bothered hiding. Behind her, Kael and the others followed. 7 broken light casters who'd found just enough strength to stand. The room went silent. Your Majesty, Thaddeus began smoothly, while we appreciate the dramatic presentation, this doesn't change the security concerns. I wasn't done talking. Elena's voice carried, not loud, but layered with harmonics that made people listen involuntarily. You want to vote on whether we live or die. Fine. But first, let's establish some facts. She pulled papers from her pocket. Breslin had found them in Thaddeus's private study during the 3 days she'd been transforming. Financial ledgers, trade agreements, harvest schedules. 8 light casters, 24 years of operation, revenue totaling $4.7 million. Elena read numbers aloud. Sold to Crimson Pack, Shadowfang Clan, Ironmaw Territory, Night Stalker Dynasty. Our blood enhanced their Wolfsbane weapons, made them stronger, more lethal. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, faces shocked, horrified. Most of them genuinely hadn't known. Let me read you some entries. Elena's voice stayed level. Clinical. 2015, KL Emberlight, 8 years old, Type O light. Sold 15 liters to Crimson Pack at $9,000 per liter. Client satisfaction high. Requested more. She looked at Thaddeus. He was 8. Necessary sacrifices, Thaddeus said. For the kingdom's protection. Protection. Kale stepped forward. His voice shook but held. You held my mother down while soldiers burned our house. You told her I'd die quick. You lied. 2019. Elena kept reading. Iris Silver Dawn tears harvested. 200 milliliters of anguish samples at 12,000. Client noted quality improved with extended extraction time. Iris moved beside KL, still blind but standing straight. Every night they made me cry. Used onion extract when I ran out of tear naturally. When that stopped working, they used pain. The crowd's murmurs turned angry, not at the light casters, at the council. Thaddeus's composure cracked slightly. These were authorized operations. King Aldrich approved. My father is dead. Cormac's voice was cold enough to frost steel. You don't get to hide behind dead men's orders anymore. Then I invoke emergency protocols. Old law, the council has authority to override even the king in matters of species purity and kingdom security. These creatures are children. Elena cut him off. The oldest is 25. Most were taken before they hit puberty. You didn't fight enemy soldiers. You tortured kids. Thaddeus went for his ace. Drew what looked like a small black crystal from his robes. Voidstone. Family heirloom from his bloodline used during the Great Severance to capture lightcasters. He activated it. Black tendrils shot from the crystal seeking lightcaster energy like heat-seeking missiles. They struck toward the 7 behind Elena, trying to drain their light. Elena moved without thinking. Stepped between the attack and her people. Let the void tendrils hit her. They shattered on contact. Didn't drain her, didn't even slow her down. Just broke like glass against her Genesis form. Thaddeus stared. That's not possible. Voidstone absorbs light. It's law of nature. I'm not just light. Elena felt her power building. Not from anger, from certainty. I'm light in shadow. Your void can't absorb what it's made of. She raised her hand. So, silver and black energy coiled around her fingers. Not attacking, offering choice. Drop the stone, end this, or I end it for you. Thaddeus looked around, saw his fellow counselors stepping back, saw guards not moving to his defense, saw the crowd's faces horrified by what he'd tried to do. He panicked, drew a knife from his robes, curved blade gleaming with sickly green sheen. Wolfsbane coating. But not normal wolfsbane. This was concentrated, distilled from lightcaster blood until it became poison that could kill anything. He lunged, not at Elena, at Cormac standing 3 feet to her left. Kill the king, create chaos, escape in the confusion. Time slowed. Elena saw the trajectory, saw the blade aimed for Cormac's heart, saw death approaching on a poisoned edge. Didn't think, just moved. Her body faster now, stepped into the blade's path. She caught it with her left hand, let it pierce her palm completely. Pain exploded up her arm, but she didn't let go. Just held the blade, stopping its momentum. Then wrapped her other hand around Thaddeus's wrist. Wrong move, she said softly. Genesis power flooded into him through contact. Not to kill, to force understanding. Empathy transfers, something she didn't know she could do until she was doing it. Thaddeus screamed, not from pain, from feeling. Every moment of suffering he'd caused crashed over him simultaneously. Elena's years in darkness, Kale's 5 years of extractions, 8 years of Iris's tears, 10 years of Mira's silence. The accumulated agony of every lightcaster he had tortured all at once, no filter, no mercy. He dropped to his knees sobbing like a child. I feel them. God, I feel every cut, every harvest, every moment. Make it stop, please. Elena pulled her hand back. The empathy transfer ended, but the memories, those would stay with him. Now you understand, she said. Now you know what you funded. She pulled the blade from her palm. Should have bled everywhere. Didn't. The wound closed instantly, both hearts pumping healing energy to the damage. She looked at her hand, not even a scar, then looked at the blade, at the wolfsbane poison meant to kill Cormac. Without thinking, she closed her fist around it, let the concentrated poison absorb into her system. Gasps around the room. That much poison should have killed her instantly. Her Genesis heart pulsed, took the poison, broke it down into components, neutralized the wolfsbane with shadow energy, used the remaining matter as fuel. Within seconds, the toxin was gone. I'm not just immune, Elena said. I'm the antidote. The council's vote, when it finally happened, was 51-2 in favor of accepting lightcasters. Thaddeus and his two closest allies against. Everyone else too horrified by what they'd learned to do anything but approve. Thaddeus was stripped of rank, exiled to Mountain Monastery. He went quietly, still crying, still feeling echoes of what he'd done. Elena watched him go and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just exhaustion. Is it always like this? She asked Cormac quietly. Fighting for the right to exist. Not always, but often enough. He touched her shoulder gently. You did well. I stabbed myself and poisoned someone with empathy. Not sure that counts as well. You saved 7 lives. You exposed corruption. You changed the kingdom's future. His hand squeezed lightly. That's the definition of well. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to feel victorious, but something nagged at her, a shadow instinct she'd inherited from her father, warning her the danger wasn't over. 3 weeks, she said. I give us 3 weeks of peace, then the real threat arrives. What threat? She looked out the window toward northern mountains where darkness gathered even in afternoon light. My father, Marcus Nightveil, Shadow King, he's alive, and he's coming. Cormac started to question, but Elena sank to her knees, exhaustion finally claiming its due. Kale and Iris moved to support her immediately, one on each side. 3 weeks, she mumbled. We prepare. We train the 7. We get ready. For what? For war. Family war. The worst kind. They helped her to her feet, these children she'd saved, who now saved her in return. Balance, partnership, the foundation of everything she was building. 3 weeks of peace, they'd use every second. The peace lasted exactly 21 days. Elena spent them training, not just herself, though her Genesis form demanded exploration testing limits she hadn't known existed. But the 7 lightcasters who'd survived hell needed more than healing. They needed to remember they were more than victims. Kale proved fastest to adapt. 13 years old, but carrying scars that aged him decades. His light burned fierce and hot, aggressive in ways lightcasters weren't supposed to be. Elena worked with him in the eastern courtyard every dawn, teaching him to channel rage into precision. Again, she called. Kale formed light into a blade slashed at the training dummy, cut clean through reinforced wood. Better. Still too much power, not enough control, but better. You're getting stronger, Elena observed. Strong enough to fight back. Kale's eyes burned violet bright. When they come for us again. If they come for you, they go through me first. You can't always be there. Elena smiled, sharp. Then I'll teach you to be there for yourself. Iris sat nearby working on a different problem. Her physical blindness was permanent tear ducts too damaged to repair. But her other senses had sharpened to supernatural levels. She could hear heartbeats from 50 yards, smell emotional states in people's sweat. And her light, when she let it manifest, created mapping networks that showed her the world in energy patterns. 3 guards approaching from the north corridor, Iris said without looking up. One is nervous, heart rate elevated, the other 2 are calm. Elena checked. Perfect accuracy. How far? 40 yards, now 35. You're better than any security system in the kingdom. Iris's smile was small but genuine. First smile Elena had seen from her. Owen worked with Lysander in the infirmary, learning to heal despite his own crippled legs. His light specialized in regeneration, ironic given his body's permanent damage. But he could accelerate healing in others, close wounds knit bones. He'd never walk again, but he could help others do what he couldn't. Mira still didn't speak, but she hummed sometimes low melodies that made plants grow faster. Her light carried life force in concentrated form. Gardens where she sat bloomed unseasonably. Crops doubled yield. The castle's grounds had never looked healthier. The three youngest children stayed close to Elena always, shadows trailing her through corridors, afraid she'd disappear if they lost sight. She didn't push them away, just let them orbit until they found their own gravity. Cormac watched it all with something between pride and pain. Pride in what Elena was building. Pain knowing his father's legacy required such rebuilding. "You're teaching them warfare," he observed one evening, watching Kyle practice combat forms. "I'm teaching them survival. There's a difference." "Is there?" Elena turned to face him fully. 21 days since her transformation, and the mate bond had only deepened. She felt his presence like a second heartbeat, constant and necessary. "You feel it too, don't you, the waiting?" Cormac's jaw tightened. "Yes, like a storm building just out of sight." "Not a storm, a shadow." Elena looked north toward mountains that seemed darker than they should be. "He's been watching, testing defenses, learning how I've changed." "Marcus, my father, yes." The word father tasted like ash. "He knows what I've become, and he's terrified of it." "Then why come at all?" "Because terror makes people do desperate things, and a desperate Shadow King is the most dangerous kind." That night, Elena dreamed of void black eyes and a voice she'd tried to forget. "You should have stayed buried, little light. Some things aren't meant to evolve." She woke to darkness and Cormac's hand already on her shoulder. Another nightmare. Premonition. Elena sat up, both hearts racing. He's coming, today, now. As if summoned by her words, the sky outside their window went black. Not gradual sunset, instant void. Like someone had thrown a shroud over the sun. Darkness absolute and unnatural, spreading from the northern mountains with predatory intent. Alarms rang throughout the castle. Guards shouted. People screamed. Elena was already moving, pulling on clothes, calling her Genesis form to the surface. Silver and black light spiraled around her wings, manifesting in patterns that hurt mortal eyes to track. One wing pure radiance, one wing living shadow. "Get everyone inside," she told Cormac. "The 7 lightcasters' priority. Whatever's coming wants them most." "What about you?" "I'm what he came for." Elena moved to the window. "Time to face family." The darkness outside writhed with shapes, not solid, not quite liquid, something between. Void Seekers, creatures of pure shadow that should have been extinct. Elena counted them in the unnatural darkness. 47 Void Seekers total, circling the castle on wings that absorbed light. And for every one she destroyed, Marcus's shadow magic would birth another from his own essence. Not infinite, but enough to exhaust her through attrition. Wyvern-shaped nightmares with 20-foot wingspans and claws that could tear through flesh and spirit simultaneously. Their eyes, when visible, burned with absence. Not black, but void. The opposite of existence. And riding the largest one, a figure that made Elena's shadow inheritance recognize its source. Marcus Nightveil, Shadow King, her father. He looked different than her memories. Older, yes, but also more. His body existed only partially in physical space, the rest dissolving into living darkness that moved independently of wind or gravity. Void black eyes and a face that might have been handsome once but now carried too much shadow to read clearly. He wore authority like armor. Centuries of bloodline power condensed into human form. This was what pure Shadow King looked like, uncorrupted by light, untempered by mercy. This was what Elena might have become if her mother had never existed. "Hello, daughter." His voice carried through the unnatural darkness, reaching every ear in the castle simultaneously. "You've grown." Elena launched from the window. Her Genesis wings caught air that shouldn't exist in this void, keeping her aloft through sheer force of will. She positioned herself between Marcus and the castle. "Father," the words still tasted wrong. "Bad timing. We just finished redecorating the dungeons." Still defiant, still stubborn. Marcus smiled, not warmth, just teeth. Your mother's influence runs deep. Don't talk about her. Why not? She's the reason we're here, her curse, her binding. 6 years I felt your suffering through blood magic. 6 years of vicarious agony she inflicted on me for the crime of trying to prevent this. He gestured at her at the Genesis form that shouldn't exist. This abomination. I'm not an abomination. You're both bloodlines merged, light and shadow in one vessel. You break every natural law. Your evolution or extinction, and I've spent 24 years believing extinction was kindest. Void Seekers circled closer. Elena moved to intercept the first wave. Her Genesis power exploded outward, catching 12 Seekers simultaneously. They shrieked high-pitched sounds that existed between hearing and feeling and disintegrated. Just unmade themselves where her power touched them. But more came. 35 Seekers remained under Marcus's control. But seeing 12 of their kind switch allegiance created confusion in the rest. Shadow creatures didn't question commands often. Now they hesitated, and hesitation was vulnerability. You can't fight all of them, Marcus observed. You're strong, but not infinite. Eventually you'll tire. Eventually you'll miss one. And when you do, they'll reach the children below. Then I won't miss. She didn't. For 10 minutes that felt like hours. Elena was everywhere at once. Intercepting Seekers, destroying them before they reached the castle, protecting 7 Lightcasters who'd already suffered enough. Her Genesis wings left trails of silver and black across void, dark sky, painting constellations and battle patterns. But Marcus was right. She wasn't infinite. And the Seekers kept spawning faster than she could destroy them. Below, Kael burst from the castle doors despite orders to stay inside. His light blazed defiant against the darkness, drawing Seekers like moths to flame. 3 dove toward him simultaneously. Elena screamed warning but was too far engaged with 5 others. Wouldn't reach him in time. Cormac did, shifted to full alpha form, massive wolf of golden brown fur and eyes like molten metal. He intercepted 2 Seekers, tore through shadow flesh with enhanced claws. But the third got past him, aimed directly at Kael's exposed back. Kael spun, didn't run, formed his light into a spear like Elena had taught him, and drove it through the Seeker's chest. The creature exploded into ash. Not helpless anymore, Kael shouted into the darkness. More Lightcasters emerged. Iris navigating the battle through sound and energy, mapping, directing people to safety. Owen from his wheelchair using healing light to seal wounds on injured guards. Even Mira silent still but humming that growth melody while holding one of the youngest children. They were fighting back, not running, not hiding, standing their ground against the darkness that had tortured them. Marcus saw it too. His expression shifted, something almost like respect crossing features too shadowed to read clearly. They've grown brave under your influence. Or stupid. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. They've grown free, Ohoi, Elena countered. That's what scares you. What scares me, daughter, is watching you become exactly what the Great Severance was designed to prevent. A bridge between bloodlines. Unity where division kept balance. Balance, Elena's laugh was bitter. You call torture and blood trade balance. I call it survival. Light and shadow together create Genesis. Genesis ends the old world. Some of us like the old world. Some of you profited from the old world. Elena dove, intercepting another wave of Seekers, while children rotted in darkness. Necessary sacrifices. For the greater. If you say greater good, I'm going to show you what Genesis power does to Shadow Kings. Marcus regarded her. You couldn't kill me if you tried. We're bound by blood curse. Your mother made sure of that. I die, you die. Murder-suicide pact wrapped in parental love. Then I'll have to be creative. Elena changed tactics, stopped destroying Seekers and started commanding them. Her shadow inheritance dormant for 22 years, but awake now, recognized the void creatures as kin. They were shadowborn, and she was half shadow. She reached out with that dark part of herself, the part that terrified her because it felt too much like her father. Grabbed the Seeker's essence and pulled. Not destroying, claiming. The creature's void eyes flickered, confused. They'd been commanded by Marcus for so long, they'd forgotten shadows could serve other masters. Elena showed them a different way. Genesis energy, silver and black intertwined, flowed into the Seekers. didn't obliterate their shadow nature, balanced it with light, transformed them from pure void into something between. Shadow-light guardians no longer hungry for destruction, but capable of protection. One by one they switched allegiance, turned away from Marcus, and circled Elena instead. Marcus stared. That's not possible. Shadow creatures don't obey Genesis. They can't. It violates their fundamental nature. I'm violating everyone's fundamental nature tonight. Elena faced him across void dark sky, now surrounded by transformed seekers. Your move, father. For the first time since arriving, Marcus looked uncertain. He'd come expecting to fight his daughter's light with his shadow. Hadn't prepared for her to use both. Hadn't imagined she could command the very creatures he'd spent decades mastering. You're more her than I expected, he said quietly. Mother. Yes, Liana was always better at the impossible. Then he attacked, not with seekers. Those were compromised now, with pure shadow magic, the kind that had earned him the title Shadow King. Darkness condensed into physical force, slamming into Elena like a tidal wave of absence. She met it with Genesis' power. Light and shadow of her own perfectly balanced, creating a barrier that turned his attack aside. The collision sent shockwaves through the air, rattling castle windows, knocking people off their feet below. You can't beat me with shadow, Elena said. I am shadow, just like you. Then I'll use the only weapon left. Marcus's form solidified, more becoming fully physical. Memory. He raised his hands and the void darkness around them shifted, became images. Projections pulled from their shared blood curse the connection that had let him feel her suffering for 6 years. Elena's memories forced into visible form. The first showed Liana, her mother beautiful and radiant, bleeding out on their family room floor. 16-year-old Elena screaming, trying to heal her light, flaring uselessly against a wound too deep. Liana's last words not to Elena but to Marcus. Blood curse, if she dies, you die. Can't kill, only watch. The second memory showed the cell. Day 1. Absolute darkness closing in. Elena's light flaring involuntarily, bringing guards with needles. The first harvest. Pain she'd had no words for. The third memory showed year 3. The day Elena had stopped crying. Stopped hoping. Just existed in darkness, counting heartbeats, waiting for death that wouldn't come. Marcus forced her to watch them all. Every memory connected through the blood curse, every moment of suffering he'd felt vicariously. Not attacking her body, but her mind, making her relive what she'd survived. This is what you are, he said. Not Genesis, not evolution, just broken pieces held together by spite. Elena felt Cormac through the mate bond, felt him trying to reach her, to pull her back from the memory assault. Felt Kyle and the others below their lights burning in support. But most of all, she felt her dual hearts beating. Human heart and Genesis heart, synchronized rhythm that kept her anchored. You're right, she said. I am broken pieces. Marcus's expression shifted. Victory, maybe. He'd expected her to deny to fight. But broken pieces can be reforged. Elena let her power build. Both sides of it, light from mother and shadow from father. Mother taught me love. You taught me survival. Together they taught me I don't have to choose. She stopped fighting his memory assault, let it wash over her, accepted every terrible moment, owned them, then showed him her memories. The ones he hadn't felt through the blood curse because they came after her transformation. Kael's face when she'd stabilized his light. First time in 5 years he'd felt safe. Iris learning to navigate through energy mapping. First time since blindness she'd felt capable. Owen healing a guard's broken arm. First time he'd been useful instead of burden. Mira humming that growth melody. First time in 10 years she'd made sound voluntarily. The 3 youngest children smiling. First time since captivity they'd remember joy. 7 lightcasters broken like her, choosing to rebuild, choosing to be more than their trauma. This is what I am, Elena said. Was just broken, also healing, not just surviving, also living. The memories clashed in the void between them, darkness and hope intertwined, and slowly the hope won. Not because it was stronger, but because it had 7 more lights feeding it. The lightcasters below, sensing Elena's struggle, poured their power upward. Kael's fierce determination. Iris's quiet strength. Owen's healing persistence, Mira's life song, the children's innocent belief that better was possible. Their combined light didn't destroy Marcus's shadow. It illuminated it, showed him what his fear had cost. Not just Elena's years in darkness, but his own 2 decades spent running. Every moment spent running from what his daughter could become instead of seeing what she was. Marcus's attack faltered. His shadow magic flickered. And for the first time in 2 decades, Elena saw his real face. Not void consumed, not hidden. Just a man who'd made terrible choices and lived with them poorly. "I can't undo it," he whispered. "Can't give you back those years. No, you can't. Can't erase what I did to your mother. No. Can't change that I chose fear over fatherhood. No." Elena flew closer, close enough to see void black eyes were actually dark blue underneath the shadow. Her eyes. "But you can choose differently now." "How after everything?" "By helping me fix what you helped break." She reached out, not with Genesis power, but with simple human gesture. Extended her hand across void dark space between father and daughter. Marcus stared at it, at skin that glowed silver and black, marked by light he'd tried to snuff out in shadow he'd given her. At the bridge he'd spent his life fighting against, made flesh in the daughter he'd tried to unmake. "I don't deserve, none of us deserve mercy. We offer it anyway. That's what makes us different than what you fear." Slowly Marcus extended his own hand. When they touched, Genesis' power flowed into him, not destroying his shadow nature, but balancing it, adding light until light and shadow mixed in patterns that looked almost like stars. He screamed, not pain, recognition. For 24 years, he'd suppressed anything that wasn't pure shadow. Now he remembered what came before, what he'd been when Lyanna was alive. For fear consumed him. "I can't be what I was," he gasped. "Then be what you could become." Elena poured more Genesis energy into him, forced integration, made him feel what she felt. 2 hearts beating in harmony, light and shadow as partners instead of enemies. Marcus's form solidified fully. The void darkness that had wrapped him dissolved, revealing actual flesh, actual body. His hair, black as pitch, now had silver threads. His eyes, still blue, held light behind them for the first time in decades. He looked 10 years younger, and infinitely older. "The children below," he said, "the 7 you freed. What about them? Let me help them. Not redemption, not absolution. Just let me try to repair a fraction of what I helped destroy." Elena studied him. Through the blood curse still binding them, she felt his sincerity, felt his genuine horror at what he'd become, felt the father he might have been if fear hadn't poisoned everything. "One chance," she said. "You hurt them again, transformed or not, I'll find a way to kill us both." They descended together, father and daughter, Shadow and Genesis, landing in the castle courtyard, where 7 light casters and 1 Alpha King waited with weapons drawn. Kael's light blazed aggressive. "That's him. That's the Shadow King, the one who ordered the raids." "I know." Elena stepped between them. "Lower your weapons." "Are you insane? He commanded the attacks that killed our families." "I know. I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm asking you to let him try to help." "Why?" Iris's voice shook. "Why would you give him that chance?" "Because someone gave me a chance. 21 days ago, I was dying in a cell labeled Abomination, scheduled for execution. Someone chose to save me anyway." Elena looked at Cormac. "Multiple someones. Maybe grace is contagious." Marcus stepped forward. Every lightcaster flinched except Kael, who just burned brighter. "I can't undo what I did," Marcus said. "Can't resurrect your families. Can't return stolen years. But I can offer this." He knelt. The gesture looked foreign on him, like his body had forgotten how. Placed both hands on the ground, palms up, throat exposed. Submission. Complete, invulnerable. "I have shadow magic. Healing shadow if you'll accept it. Won't fix everything. But Iris's eyes partially. Owen's legs may be enough for braces. The young one's trauma, I can dull the worst edges." "Why?" Owen asked him. "Why help now?" "Because my daughter showed me what I should have seen 24 years ago. Evolution isn't extinction. Change isn't death. And fear makes terrible foundation for anything." Silence. The Lightcasters looked at each other, then at Elena. 7 broken people who'd survived hell, now asked to accept help from one of hell's architects. Kael spoke first. You heal Iris's eyes, even partial, I'll consider not killing you. Marcus's lips twitched, almost smile. Deal. He approached Iris slowly. She stood rigid, trembling, but didn't run. Marcus placed hands on either side of her face, careful not to touch yet. This will hurt. Old scars resist healing, but I can restore maybe 40% vision, enough to see shapes, light faces. Do it. Shadow magic flowed into Iris's ruined tear ducts. Not dark like before, but gray twilight, soft weaving through damaged tissue and coaxing it to remember what functional looked like. Iris gasped, tears streaming, but real tears this time, salt water instead of harvested pain. When Marcus stepped back, Iris's eyes had changed. Still scarred, but no longer completely opaque. Cloudy blue instead of white. She blinked and Elena saw the moment vision returned. I can see you, Iris whispered. You're glowing. Most days. Marcus moved to Owen next. The young man's legs were beyond full restoration, but shadow magic could knit partial function. Enough to stand with support. Enough to walk short distances with assistance. Then the 3 youngest. Their trauma ran deepest, barely verbal, but Marcus's healing shadow could dull the worst memories. Not erase. That would be cruelty of different kind, but soften enough that they might sleep without screaming. By the time he finished, Marcus was shaking. The healing had cost him substantially. Good, Elena thought. Should cost him. Nothing about this should be easy. That's all I can manage today, he said. More later if you'll allow it. We'll think about it, Kael said. Still hostile, but less. Don't expect gratitude. I don't expect anything, except maybe to stay alive long enough to do more. Marcus turned to Elena. I can't stay, not yet. Your people would be justified in executing me, but I'll return, if you'll have me. Where will you go? North, into the shadow territories. There are others like me, stuck in fear of building walls instead of bridges. Maybe I can show them what you showed me. He paused. Maybe I can be the father I should have been, even if it's 24 years late. Elena wanted to say something profound, some declaration of forgiveness or hope, but words felt inadequate. So she just nodded. Come back when you're ready. The bridge will be here. Marcus smiled, real smile this time, sad and genuine, then dissolved into shadows, not void dark, but twilight gray, threaded with silver. He flowed away into darkness, heading north, leaving Elena standing in courtyard surrounded by 7 lightcasters and 1 Alphaking. Did that just happen? Kael asked. I think so. Your family is insane. Completely. Cormac approached still in half-shifted form, eyes golden. You okay? Ask me in a year, or 10. Fair. 3 months later, they held the wedding at dawn, but the night before Elena couldn't sleep. Both hearts racing, she walked to the Genesis stone alone, needing to understand what she'd become. The stone pulsed as she approached. Triple rhythm matching her dual heartbeat, somehow mathematics that made no sense but felt right. She placed both hands on its surface, and the stone showed her something new. Not memories this time. Futures. Possibilities branching like rivers from this moment. Some showed her ruling beside Cormac, building bridges between bloodlines across continents. Others showed her fighting, always fighting against those who'd rather see divisions remain. One future showed her failing, assassinated by extremists who feared Genesis more than they wanted peace. Her death sparking a war that undid everything she'd built. Another showed her succeeding beyond imagining. 10 years from now, 50 Genesis children born to mixed bloodline parents. A new generation that couldn't be categorized as light or shadow, or wolf only as themselves. Which one do I walk into? She whispered. The stone pulsed, showed her one more image. 7 light casters standing with her, Kael fierce and protective, and Iris seeing more than most with sight, Owen healing what seemed broken, Mira singing life into darkness. The 3 youngest no longer afraid, not alone, never alone again. The future where I stop trying to be perfect, Elena realized, where I'm just enough. Behind her footsteps, the 7 light casters unable to sleep, either drawn by the same pull. Couldn't leave you to brood alone, Kael said. Bad habit. Terrible habit, Iris agreed. They gathered around the Genesis stone, 8 hands touching its surface, 8 lights feeding into it, and the stone sang a harmonic frequency that made windows rattle and hearts synchronize. This, this was what she'd become. Not singular Genesis, but plural. Not bridge alone, but foundation for others to build on. Tomorrow, Elena said, tomorrow we show them what's possible. Tonight, Mira spoke voice hoarse from disuse but clear. Tonight we just exist, together. They stood in silence, 8 broken people who'd survived and chosen to rebuild. Not into what they were, into what they could become. The next morning, ceremony hall had been rebuilt. The glass floor panel installed showing the cell below, where Elena had nearly died. Plaque beside it reading never again, never forgotten. Elena stood before the Genesis stone wearing a dress that seemed woven from starlight and shadow silk donated by craftspeople from 3 territories who'd worked together for the first time in generations. White fabric that caught light, black fabric that absorbed it. Both merged seamlessly. Cormac wore traditional alpha regalia, but modified with silver-black threading that matched her dress. Symbolic, deliberate, unity made visible. 8 lightcasters served as honor guard. Kale held the ring standing steady despite everything. Iris, whose partial vision had improved to 60% after 3 months of Marcus's continued healing sessions, stood as Elena's witness. She could see faces, now red expressions, navigate without assistance. Owen, walking short distances with shadow-forged braces, stood for Cormac. Myra hummed softly that growth melody, making flowers bloom unseasonably around the hall. The 3 youngest children scattered light petals that glowed faintly in the dawn dimness. Elder Cassia officiated before the Genesis stone, which pulsed with triple rhythm. Light Shadow Wolf. All 3 bloodlines recognized and accepted. "Do you accept this bond?" she asked. Elena looked at Cormac, saw past the Alphaking to the man who'd torn through wolfsbane laced iron to reach her, who'd sat vigil for 72 hours while she transformed, who'd chosen to tear down his father's legacy and build something better. "I do." Cormac looked at her, saw past the Genesis bridge to the girl who'd survived years alone and emerged stronger, who'd chosen forgiveness when revenge would have been easier, who'd built family from broken pieces. "I do." They kissed under sunrise. Northern lights danced across the sky, impossible this far south, this early in day. Shadow magic from someone watching from distance. Marcus's blessing given from afar. Elena felt him through the blood curse, felt his pride, his grief, his hope that maybe he could become worthy of standing in her light someday. Not today, but someday. She pulled back from the kiss, looked at the 7 light casters who'd survived with her, at Cormac, who'd chosen her despite every reason not to, at the castle full of people learning to see past old divisions. "Ready?" Cormac asked. "For what?" "Everything that comes next." Through the Genesis stone, Elena sent a pulse through her blood connection with Marcus. Not words, just feeling. "You're welcome at the next one. A year from now, maybe. When you're ready." His response came as twilight-colored light streaking across the dawn sky. Acceptance. Gratitude. Promise. Kale nudged her. "Speech time, you're the bridge. Say something bridgy." Elena laughed, turned to face the assembly. Wolves and lightcasters and humans all gathered in space that had once held such darkness. 3 months ago, I counted days in a cell under your feet, waited for death that wouldn't come. Today I stand here not because I'm special or chosen or destined, but because people chose grace when judgment would have been easier. She gestured at Cormac. He chose to dig beneath his father's lies. At Lysander. He chose to heal what he didn't break. At Cassia. She chose to remember what could be instead of only what was. At the 7 lightcasters. They chose to stand when lying down would have hurt less. She placed both hands on the Genesis stone. This isn't just about light and shadow and wolf anymore. It's about choosing evolution over extinction. Choosing to build instead of divide. Choosing to be better than our worst moments. The stone pulsed brighter. 8 lightcasters added their power to it. Cormac placed his hand beside Elena's, adding wolf essence. Slowly others approached. Nobility guards, even some who'd voted against them initially. One by one they touched the Genesis stone, and one by one it accepted them. Not transforming them, just acknowledging their choice to try. By the time the sun fully rose, 300 hands rested on the stone, 300 hearts beating in imperfect but willing synchronization. This is just the beginning, Elena said softly. Kyle grinned. Good. I was worried it'd be boring after yesterday's near-death experience. There'll be more of those. Figured. Worth it, though. Elena looked at the gathering, at people from bloodlines that had killed each other for generations now standing together. Awkward, uncertain, but present. Yeah, she agreed. Worth it. Outside light chased shadow across mountains, but shadow didn't disappear. Just danced with light in eternal partnership. The way it always should have been. The way it would be now if Elena had anything to say about it. And as Genesis Queen, she had everything to say about it. The bridge was built. Time to teach the world how to cross it, one careful step at a time. Together.